Hello and welcome to Student Affairs Live. I'm your host, Tony Doody, and I'm pleased to be joining you from my professional home at Rutgers University. We broadcast on the Higher Ed Live network, and you can tune in to Student Affairs Live along with my talented friend and colleague, Heather Shea Gasser, Wednesdays this summer at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Be sure to stay with us till the end of the show to hear about the great lineup we have scheduled for this upcoming month. In a moment, I'll introduce you to our awesome guests, but we can't first do that without giving a shout out to the sponsors that make Student Affairs Live possible. Higher Ed Live is sponsored and produced by M. Stoner, a marketing communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Student Affairs Live is also sponsored by ACPA, College Student Educators International. ACPA's strategic partnership with Higher Ed Live calls attention to the pairing of innovative professional development delivery with the strength of a renowned professional association. ACPA publishes the Journal of College Student Development and About Campus. Thanks to Robin Janice, Rutgers Director of Leadership, for monitoring today's back channel and taking questions from the Twitterverse. In the spirit of today's show, she's agreed to tweet while working out on a spinning bike and also listening to a Zumba soundtrack. Thanks, Robin. So, as a point of information for our viewers, campus recreation is a topic that's near and dear to me, as I spent 17 years working in recreation in areas of facilities management, aquatics and fitness, leadership development, outdoor recreation, and intramurals. And it was an area that provided great fulfillment and growth, and I had the pleasure to interact with an incredibly talented group of professionals from across the country. Now, as I did some preparation for today's show, I came across a recent post by one of our guests, Stan Shingles, in his capacity as incoming president of NERSA. And in that post, he shared several questions that were posed from this year's National Conference closing speaker, Paul Wesselman, which included, what is it time to let go of, what will be important to hold on to, and what could be useful to look forward to. Now, I think those questions provide an excellent frame for today's show, and I'll get back to them in just a moment. But I'd now like to introduce you to three people who are forging new ground and leading the way in campus recreation. Cara, Stan, and Don, welcome to today's show. I'd like to start off by having each of you introduce yourself with your school, your role, your favorite recreation activity, and one sport or activity that has diminished in popularity that you hope might someday make a comeback. Let's start with you, Don.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for hosting, Tony. My name is Don Stenta. I serve as the Director of Recreational Sports at Ohio State with the Office of Student Life. My favorite recreation activity typically involves anything related to our group fitness class schedule, like cycle and cardio kickboxing. And, I talk with our fitness staff a lot, and I really plead for the return of step aerobics. They're telling me that it's not coming back anytime soon, but I definitely think that step aerobics is one of those activities I'd love to see back on the regular schedule.
How many tiers do you do? 1, 2? How many is stacked?
Two is about good.
Okay. All right, Stan.
Well, first of all, Tony, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. And as you mentioned, my name is Stan Shingles. I'm the Assistant Vice President for University Recreation Events and Conferences at Central Michigan University, where I've now spending my 26th year here at CMU. And related to what I like to be involved in, anything related to sports. I've been involved in sports since I was 7 years old, and I think I probably put myself today in the category of weekend warrior. And I underscore that by saying I'm a weekend warrior because usually I spend, or excuse me, I should say my wife spends the rest of the balance of the week putting me back together after my weekend activities. So I was very fortunate 20 plus years ago to marry an athletic trainer, so I have my own in-house therapy system to put me back together. And one of our passions, and it's not just one that I share, but I also share with another panelist, Dr. Cara McFadden, but also my wife, and that's roller skating. And I think there needs to be more of that. It's such a great aerobic exercise, and more importantly, just a whole lot of fun and something that I'm not into rollerblading. It's got to be, the quads, and hopefully maybe that'll come back someday.
Cool. So you mentioned Cara McFadden, and I want our viewers to know that we were working on getting her up and live on the show. We're having a few connection problems, but as soon as she's here, we'll have her introduce herself. So let's get started into the questions. I got sent a lot of questions, and I'm actually looking at the live viewership. There are a ton of people on this show right now, perhaps one of the largest shows we've done over the last year. So that's a good sign. There's certainly interest in this topic. Let's get into some of the questions that I got sent by the viewers over the last few weeks. What are some of the campus trends that you're paying close attention to this year? Stan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I think first of all there are many, and I think as we think about trends, those things are something. Those things have an ebb and flow to them. But I think one of the more important things that I've been mapping is how campus recreation intersects with enrollment management strategies. Most institutions today are challenged with not only the recruitment of students but also the retention of students and student success overall, the total student experience. And I think we're at a critical point now where departments like campus recreation are vital in terms of the services that they provide these students, and more importantly, how all of these things intersect and integrate at some level to be able to ensure student success. And today, the average student who today, we have to put in a category of a consumer. Those individuals are shopping around. They're used to the amenities of recreation and fitness facilities and programs and services. So it's not their first experience when they come to college. So I think as we start talking about how those things relate to our enrollment management strategies, being able to leverage those resources and being able to integrate them into the bigger enrollment management strategy, I certainly think is critical.
Great. Don, you want to jump in?
Sure. I would definitely agree. I think that the enrollment management strategies are critical. I think that we're seeing significant interest in linking to the student learning agenda, so that instead of thinking about collegiate recreation as activity that happens outside the classroom that's extraneous to the learning environment, that we actually provide and facilitate those learning environments that enhance student learning. And so there are a number of us across the country and organizations like NERSA and other organizations that are looking at how do we align with a student learning agenda, so that we're spending time taking a look at the connection between fitness participation, traffic reports, and aligning them to retention, to things like GPA, retention rate, graduation rates. Part of it, I think, is driven not only because of the learning environments where we work, but because of the issue of college affordability. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but there's a constant perception that the reason why college costs are out of control today is because of these lavish country clubs that have been built by way of recreation centers. And so I have obviously some thoughts about this in terms of that these perceptions are not grounded in reality, and that we need to work as collegiate recreation professionals really hard to dispel some of these notions that we've just spent significant amounts of money to build lavish country clubs, and they're not part of the student learning equation.
Great. So I'm getting an update. We have Cara McFadden is rebooting, and hopefully will join us shortly. I want to move back to the first two questions that we posed in the opening by Paul Wetzelman. So as an industry, we'll ask this to you, Stan. As an industry, what do you think rec professionals need to let go of, and what should we be holding on to?
Well, I think to start with, some of what we need to let go are more traditional delivery systems of programs and services as we've offered them in the past. This is a much different generation than 20 years ago, and I think the innovations of how we deliver those services to the student today has to be customized for today's student using kind of the traditional ways of doing things as a bit of a foundation, because I think it still has a place when we talk about the centralized nature of collegiate recreation facilities, for instance. We're seeing more satellite facilities being built in the residence halls, facilities being more accessible to students across a longer period of the day. Some facilities now being open 24 hours, as well as our delivery systems of how we develop and design our programs today, whether we're talking about inclusion in programs and how we structure rules that will allow active engagement and participation across the platform, as opposed to we've always done it this way. And I think today that some of those outdated delivery systems that many of us call tradition, I think we're being a bit challenged, especially by this generation who ask what and why a lot and want a good, compelling reason why we do what we do. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges. And more importantly, I think we need to really look in the mirror and start to think about how we stop doing some of those more traditional things.
Great. So, Don, you want to weigh in on that?
You know, I think that it's really important to think about the growth and the evolution of collegiate recreation as a profession. We did celebrate the Centennial of Collegiate Recreation back in 2013, and so for 100 years there was such intense building, growth, and development around the programs that we offer, and then certainly a lot of attention has been paid over the last 30 or 40 years to build facilities, to enhance them, to basically replace old and aging facilities. And one of the things I think is really important for recreation professionals to look at is how is it that we become even more tied to the fabric of the higher education entity. So it's critical for campus leaders today in recreation to have a really solid understanding of what's happening in the higher education field, what's happening with people who are our stakeholders, our policymakers, and understanding that these external factors really do have an impact in the way that our programs operate. So I think one of the things that we need to let go of is a sort of siloed approach to the way that we do business, and something that we need to hold on to is this idea that we matter and we offer a great deal of opportunity to impact students in their development and growth, and we need to make sure that we align that with what's happening with the external environment today.
Great. I can see Cara's smiling photo up there, but I think we have yet to connect through to her. So let's move on to the next question. Don, what are some of the, we talked about keeping up with the trends in technology. What are some of the new and innovative ways that technology is being incorporated into campus rec operations?
Yeah, it really is an exciting time that you really cannot even sort of keep track of the number of opportunities we have as campus rec people to make connections with vendors and organizations out there interested in aligning with our programs, our services, and our facilities and the technologies that are emerging. So you'll find a lot of applications and a lot of content in there that can help students learn about the wait time in their favorite facility for a particular piece of equipment. We see a lot of technology being built into intramural participation and record keeping. There's a lot of really great websites that help us with intramural registration and tracking all of the engagement and participation with intramurals, with sport clubs. There's a lot of technology being built into individual pieces of fitness equipment, and that obviously helps students kind of monitor and track their own individual accomplishments. So whether it's through entering a code or something like a phone number to track your individual accomplishments, that seems to be something that has gotten a lot of really great attention. What I would love to see happen, and what I've had conversations with some of our vendors, is I think it would be really cool to link the individual fitness activity that happens in our recreation centers to reveal some collective accomplishments and activities, so that if in this particular hour we could have reader boards or you know, scrolling signs that say, collectively in the past hour, Ohio State students or students at Central Michigan University have burned off this number of calories or have run this number of miles. I think it's a way for us to use technology to make individual fitness activity more of a collective and more of an engaging program, because it can be really solitary if you think about it. People get on a treadmill, they throw in their headphones, and they're off on their own. So there's great technology that's emerging. I'm hoping that we can see some of the collective activity come together, and that would be really, really exciting.
It is an exciting time as individuals, you know, it becomes more personalized and people are tracking. It'd be interesting at some point if we can take and aggregate that data and evaluate, you know, if you go 4 times to the rec center over the course of the week, are you going to, you know, have a higher GPA or
Yeah.
a better retention rates for our students?
Yeah.
Certainly lots of possibilities there. I love the dashboard idea of how many miles tracked or how many steps taken.
Well, and people are really engaging and sharing that information through social media. You'll see people tweet out or place in their Facebook newsfeed that they run 3.2 miles today, and linking those kind of pieces of technology to the individual effort is great. I'd like to just see that next step where we're doing it to create a better sense of community and more engagement.
Cool. So I'm going to move over into sport clubs. We had some questions come to us about sport clubs, and I know, Stan, you have some oversight for athletic operations, but let's talk about the evolution of sport clubs, and they really have changed quite a bit since when I went to school. You know, we've got athletic trainers, EMTs, coaches, better facilities, lengthier travel, and that's really increased the costs and the competition. Are we becoming mini athletic departments? Like, where is all this heading, Stan?
Well, I wouldn't put it in the category of mini athletic departments. I think it has its own unique identity, and I think the piece that makes it unique from athletics is the leadership development piece. I don't think that's identified enough as we sell the importance of sport clubs. It's for students by students, if you will. In most instances, many of those sport clubs are student organizations who function throughout the structure of the institution in terms of how they're formed and how they're operated. I think the piece that does have a little bit of a parallel with athletics would be the high-level competition that takes place with national championships today and those type of things. But fundamentally, it's still about students and their development. And I think when you talk about athletics, it's about athletes and student athletes and their development. I think we would all agree with that. But at the end of the day, recreational sports directors will never be measured by whether they win or lose. Coaches are measured by whether they win or lose. So that's the fundamental difference right there. And more importantly, as I continue to look at, and we've had great success here at Central Michigan University with our sport club programs with minimal funding, because it all emerges out of the same model. So there's no priority, if you will, greater than others as it relates to student organizations, and the philanthropy that students have to engage in, where they learn how to interact and sell and be persuasive in their experiences to get the funding that they need to compete on a national level. We're seeing an arms race in facilities of recreational sports or collegiate recreation, just as we are in athletics, but that's not necessarily specific to club sports. I've seen some unbelievable facilities. We're building one here at CMU that we will share with athletics. That will be a game changer for our lacrosse and soccer club programs. So I understand the dynamics of that, but it's also about the student experience. When we go to orientation sessions today, one of the first questions that's asked from parents is, how can my son or daughter get involved in club sport activities? Because we have to remember today, the club model does not start at the collegiate level. It's starting when many of these young people are 8, 9 years old, and they're starting with travel soccer clubs and basketball, AAU or AYBT, or they're involved in gymnastics. So the culture has changed quite a bit, and it's become quite the challenge for leaders in this profession to be able to manage, and more importantly, not allow it to become the monster that athletics is. It'll never be funded like athletics. It will never have the financial structures that athletics has. But certainly, in my opinion, especially when I assess our club sport situation here at CMU, where our club sport athletes outnumber intercollegiate athletes 2 to 1, that's part of enrollment management, because those are tuition-paying, fee-paying students who are contributing to the entire university.
Great. So I saw Cara for a moment, and she dropped out. We'll keep trying to connect on the back end here. Let's turn for a moment and talk about trends in aquatics. And we'll give this one to you, well, actually anyone who wants it. Is construction of a large natatorium still a mainstay for a rec center? Like, how are students using pools these days?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I think it's a very important part of a recreation program. We have a very steady flow of regular users who are very engaged in our aquatics operation, and then on a pretty regular basis, we will see people join either some sort of swimming activity because of fitness, because of advice that they've gotten from their medical professional about trying a new fitness activity. You know, maybe it's related to an injury or some sort of different advice from a medical professional. So we've got obviously pools being used in competitive environment for varsity sports, and then also there's a lot of really very regular traffic for informal recreation for classes, competitive activity. And then we're seeing, I think, one of the trends is growing use of fun activities, things like playing Battleship or wipeout courses. Stand-up paddleboarding is something that's really popular. So I think when we're able to have a comprehensive program, and this is, I think, advice for our entire profession across collegiate recreation, the more that we can create opportunities for us to bring in users from across the spectrum and provide opportunities for instruction and encourage people to try out new activities and new opportunities, then I think that there's always going to be a win-win scenario. You know, one of the things that's worked very well for us here at Ohio State is that the recreational sports department operates our entire aquatics center, and then athletics, that's the space that athletics will use. So this this sort of cost-shared environment, I think, has been really successful for us. It relies heavily on us having positive and great relationships, and I think that it works really well. Again, I think the one thing we need to do is weigh out perceptions, because some people think that having large aquatic centers with a lot of pools and things like lazy rivers and outdoor pools is kind of adding to this issue of the cost of higher ed. But when you're programming these spaces appropriately and you're seeing the kind of activity that we see, I think there are an aquatics operation is a really important part of recreation today.
Stan, anything to add to that?
Well, I think Don's point about, you know, the modality of pools today and its use, you know, as a therapeutic kind of environment, I think is really important, especially as we're talking about a couple of different things. One, the fitness aspect that we're seeing in aquatic centers today, unmatched from what we've seen in the past, and we know that that those activities are good. They're good for the body, and they're good for the development of people. And I think, you know, I was joking earlier about, you know, being married to an athletic trainer, and I know her philosophy has always been the more you can use pools in your rehabilitation and your treatment of injuries, in other words, using it as a modality, the better. And so I think as the more comprehensive, we're seeing a movement away from some of the more traditional kinds of uses of pools that we've seen before, and we're seeing them becoming more activity-based. That's why you're seeing various bodies as opposed to, you know, a 25-yard pool that's primarily used for lap swimming or even for competition for that matter, and really moving to that's going to be more activity-based.
Great. So in an attempt to cut costs, generate profit, we've seen privatization of services impact several areas of student affairs, including housing, student unions, dining services, and even health and counseling. Is this something that we need to be concerned about for recreation?
Well, quite frankly, I don't think so. I think I've always been a firm believer that competition creates opportunity, and when we start talking about the outsourcing, if we can use that term, that's happening. Is it abundant? No. Will it be? I don't think so. Because a lot of that is about proprietorship, probably more than anything else. Who has the expertise? Some institutions have made up their mind that they don't necessarily have the expertise, nor do they want the responsibility or burden of managing these complex facilities. So they go out and hire companies who have an expertise, who come in and are able to do things in a business model that allows for financial success, but also if it's integrated the right way with the right values of collegiate recreation and how it serves today's student, those things could be married together. And I think an important part of the success is maintaining the standards of the staff that's hired. If you're hiring people who still understand the development of students, they still understand student success, and that this is important in the entire scheme of the university, then I think there is a place, and I don't think you're going to notice whether it's internal or external unless you're actually in the know.
Cool. So wherever I go, colleagues in student affairs talk about the struggle to communicate and connect with students. Don, what are some of the innovative ways you've seen rec departments reach out and connect with students to increase engagement?
I think this question kind of showcases the transition in collegiate recreation as a profession. That our department is called recreational sports, and I view that as sort of a misnomer because the word sport still implies that there's this competitive engagement that happens where there's a winner and a loser, and so we kind of have to be at odds in order for us to get that experience. And certainly competition is an important part of our environment, and we want to help facilitate the competitive play. But what we need to do is think differently about how to engage people who don't view themselves as that athlete. Even though we have data that shows that 50% of high school students who come to college come having played a varsity sport, obviously that's a large number, but there's a very significant number of people who don't necessarily see themselves as having a place, a home base in a recreation environment. So what we've been trying to do over the past several years is spend a lot of time and attention paying attention to our things like our traffic reports. So when a student swipes their ID card, that information is aligned to the student information system, and so on the aggregate, we're getting information collectively about visits to our recreation centers and engagement with our programs across class rank, across, we find out information that's based in gender, that's based in race and ethnicity, by academic major, by living environment around campus or off campus. So that information is very helpful for us as we put together a plan for our different activities and even taking a look at things like our facility hours. So what we do out of that exercise is look at, okay, who's not coming to our facilities and how do we sort of analyze these trends if there are trends out there. So one of the things that we've done is to really try to incentivize visits and behavior. A lot of times we'll have some non-traditional recreation activities happening where we do a swipe in to win campaign. So if a student comes to this event, they swipe their ID card, they're entered into a raffle for some sort of prize that's maybe a Fitbit or something like that. And then what we have then is data that captures who came to that event, and it helps us in our sort of marketing and in our program planning. That has been very successful for us, and I think what happens is we're able to provide a sharper fitness schedule, for example. We're able to analyze things like facility hours so that we can allocate resources in the best way possible to make sure that we do see this increased engagement across all different across students from all different backgrounds, and I think that that's a really critical aspect for us to be considering is how do we make sure that we're available here for the student body and for the people who are visiting our facilities.
Right. So Cara keeps dropping on and off, and I don't want to miss this opportunity to talk about leadership and development. So Don, I know that you're working as a co-editor with Cara on the New Directions for Student Leadership book. It's going to be released by Wiley Publishing this fall, right?
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the publication and how you hope it'll impact the field?
This is just incredibly exciting. I think that we are at the beginning phase of some deep exploration in aligning leadership development with collegiate recreation. And the transition that's going to happen is that, in my experience, recreation people align concepts like development around leadership development or student development to professional competency growth or to professional development. So it's preparing students to interview for a job, to put together a good resume, doing etiquette training, those sorts of things, which are obviously really important and very critical. What I'm hoping what we'll be able to do with this book that's coming out is take a look at some of the emerging leadership models that are in higher education today, and basically align them with what's happening with our recreation programs and services and activities. And so the book is part of the New Directions in Student Leadership series. That's the series editors are Susan Comavez and Kathy Guthrie. And so you know right there with the two of them involved that there's going to be some really great attention being paid to student leadership development through this series. So we are actually the third volume, and as you said, the launch date is this August. And I see Cara. Is she?
Cara, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yay!
Oh my goodness! It's all about the bandwidth, you know.
Right.
Have we gotten to the technology question yet?
So, Cara, can you introduce yourself for our audience here today? Where are you from? School, what you do, favorite rec activity, and the rec activity you want to have a comeback.
Well, I'm in need of a rec activity right now. No. I'm at Elon University, and I'm an assistant professor in sport and event management within the School of Communications. And currently, primarily, I am teaching undergraduate research methods and then facility operations and venue management. In regards to my favorite activities inside, love being able to lift weights, and but primarily love being outdoors. If it's trail running, kayaking, and being able to play. And I'm not sure if Stan talked about how we need to bring roller skating back. So if anybody wants to tweet about if there's a club sport or intramural roller derby team out there, let me know, because we might have to bring that back.
Not just roller skating, roller derby.
Yeah, I think I missed my calling. I wish I would have gotten into that, but I guess it's never too late.
and I think we lost her at that point. So hopefully she rejoins us, and we can get into some of the research questions that we have here. We did get a Twitter question from Clint Menifee from Dallas, Texas. Not sure what school he's from. And the question is, do you see campus rec broadening to include more wellness to appeal to more students and grow impact on campus?
Well, I'll start on that. I think that's the greatest growth potential for collegiate recreation, because I think when we look at the holistic aspect of it, when we look at health and well-being and how that wraps into collegiate recreation, I think that's our greatest opportunity. And more wellness in terms of looking at the student in total, holistically, is certainly a direction that many schools have already moved in, and I see more and more moving in that direction, because when we start talking about student success, we shouldn't be talking about it. Don earlier talked about the siloed mentality. If we feel like we only own the fitness and the fun aspect of students versus this holistic, then we're going to continue to reside in our silos. If we see ourselves as being partners in the greater development of these students, then wellness will become an essential part, and I think some institutions already have integrated that at a very high level.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think that I just had a meeting with our marketing staff this morning to talk about the continued activation of our hashtag, which is Life in Motion. Because if we just approach recreation environments as this is the physical activity that you can do here, and we're not addressing sort of the broader issues, we miss a lot of that. I think Stan's absolutely right. Ohio State operates with the perspective that there are 9 dimensions of wellness, and so that's such a comprehensive understanding of what the whole student goes through, that we should be kind of equal players and partners in wellness operations. And so I think that we might be seeing integrations, we might be seeing partnerships. At the very least, there ought to be some great opportunities for cross-programming and promotion of activities that are happening between recreation and wellness programs.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you list those, for our viewers, those 9 dimensions of wellness?
Yeah, so we, let's see, it's social, occupational, spiritual, or physical, intellectual, emotional, environmental, fiscal, or financial, and then artistic and creative. So how's that?
That's I think that's 9.
I heard that was 9.
Well, Tony, and let me just tie a piece into what Don just mentioned. NERSA just participated in a partnership study with NACA, the National Association of Campus Activities, related to what employers are looking for, and took a look at NACE and what NACE has said employers today are looking for, and in terms of skills. And many of the things that Don just mentioned in that wellness model really reside within within those characteristics and talents that employers are looking for today. And through this white paper that was done very well, I think, by NACA and NERSA, it really underscores that the co-curricular experiences that students are having, especially in collegiate recreation, are promoting the development of those skills, the ability to work in a team structure, the ability to make decisions and problem solve, the ability to verbally communicate with persons inside and outside of the organization. That's what employers are looking for. And there are others. In the interest of time, I'll spare those, but this study is available, and I think it really helps us to connect, especially when you have states like Florida who are considering legislation where they are going to tie state funding into employability and the success of college graduates completing their experience and then being employed. So that's a game changer right there, because it was previously tied to other metrics such as retention and graduation rates and those kinds of things, and now we're seeing some other measures, because I think the ultimate objective when you go to college is to enhance your employability, and I think with the work we're doing, especially in that total wellness model that most universities may offer, but it's not connected, maybe like Ohio State has theirs connected with 9 principles of wellness, if you will, but the more we're developing those in the collective, the more successful these students are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So on a similar tack, campus recreation often gets criticized because it's not seen as connected to the academic core, right? People point to rock gyms and new construction and specialty swimming pools as examples of priorities that aren't aligned with the core mission of the university. How should we be responding as professionals to that criticism?
I think that criticism is so off base, and it's frustrating to me that even our university colleagues will approach us as this stuff is extraneous. What I find fascinating is that Ohio State's first gymnasium was built on our campus in 1898. We were founded in 1870. So 28 years after we were founded as a university, a gymnasium went up. So right from the very beginning, physical activity, at least, has been at the core of educating the whole student. Our universities have been founded under this principle that we're here to develop leaders and to develop citizens, people who are going to be responsible and contributing members of society. That doesn't just happen with activity that takes place in the classroom. So these student life, student affairs, opportunities for engagement help contribute directly to that. And I think that the criticism about the lavishness of facilities is simply a response to market needs today. We have parents, family members, alumni, people in the community who have expectations that have been set because standards for physical activity have evolved over time. So just like you're seeing classrooms change because we're adding more technology, a recital hall that you build today is very different than one that was built in 1940. A chemistry lab that gets built today is very different than a lab that was built in the 1930s. And so technology evolves, and that's what we're finding here with our recreation centers. We're responding not only to market needs, but to kind of visionary plans to infuse some of these other aspects about how do you create community and build leaders. So climbing walls are a great example. That to me is one example of how far our profession has come to be more inclusive, because we always want to be at the core of trying to help serve all the needs of our students. And climbing walls require different physical activities and different physical techniques to reach goals. And typically the goals that you're setting in a climbing wall when you're doing rock climbing you share those goals with other people, and you're creating this peer-to-peer learning that takes place. There's different leadership development and leadership training that's actually embedded in that experience. So I think that climbing wall is a great example of the peer learning that takes place within our operation. And I think part of the problem is that our critics don't understand how our profession has evolved, and we haven't done a good job of articulating how important these sort of newer ideas are to assisting in student development.
And Tony, if I could add to that, I think part of myth busting, if you will, that whole notion is to really have more evidence-based rationale of why these things are important. And I look at the research that's being done today, and how we're, look at the work that Don and Cara are doing centered around leadership. I remember a number of years ago, we were interested in starting a leadership minor on our campus here at CMU, and the academics said, leadership is not a discipline. How can you make it a minor or a major? Now everybody's fighting over it as one of the largest majors on our campus, and very, very, very successful. But more importantly, I look at the work of people like Scott Forster, who authored the Benefits of Campus Recreation study, that's evidence-based, that it's not anecdotal. It's these things have an impact, and this is how. NERSA has partnered with John Dugan from Loyola University Chicago to study leadership in intramurals and club sports, and how important these things are in the development of students. So before, it was our opinion. On our campus here at CMU, there is no larger human performance and or human subject laboratory in the confines of this campus than our collegiate recreation facilities. And we partner with departments across the whole entire university to allow them to come in and use this environment to be able to have that evidence that I just talked about, that's extremely important. And I think Don earlier mentioned silos, and I had that written in my notes in large capital letters. We have to get out of the old way of doing things and open the door to collaboration and partnerships, not only in student affairs and enrollment management, and even in business and finance, because we are enterprises in a lot of ways, but also the academic area, to make sure that the curriculums that we have are married to the programming and the facilities and the services that we offer at our institutions.
So what's the practical implementation of that? If we want to start to break down those silos, I'm a fitness director, an intramural director, or a facilities director. What are some of the practical things that I might do to break out of those silos?
Well, I think it starts with finding partnerships. Let me give you an example. Not an academic example, but this is a good example, I think, because it ties into that wellness model. Unified intramural sports is an emerging opportunity on our campus. We have it on our campuses. We're actually, some of us going to have the opportunity to go to the World Special Olympics Games in LA in July. And the opportunity, when you look at what that can do in transforming students from an inclusion standpoint, from a philanthropic standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a community engagement, the list goes on and on and on of what those opportunities. So it's finding the various niches. Here at CMU, our Special Olympics Michigan office is on our campus. So that's an easy partnership. But they've been here for 40 years, and we've been doing unified intramural sports for a year and a half. So what happened the first 38 plus years? We weren't thinking about this. And so I use that as an example because I really think it's customized to the various campuses based on, we have wonderful relationships here with our recreation and park students who do research projects within our facilities and as part of our programming to assess satisfaction levels or to improve processes or whatever it is that they may want to examine. And the same with our sport management and our exercise science and our athletic training sports medicine programs, which is an emerging part of our program when we talk about the healthy lifestyles of students. We were one of, I think, the third institution in the country that had a sports medicine program. You and I earlier were talking about Michael Dunn. He had the first one at Southern Illinois University. Now everybody has them because it's an essential part of that total student experience, and those are academic departments. Our department was just cited in the accreditation study for our athletic training program, and that athletic trainer that I talked about a little bit earlier who takes good care of me, she happens to direct that program, so she paid me to say this. I want to make sure, but in their accreditation it cited our recreational sports facility as being the best of all of the clinical sites that our students rotate through as part of their clinical experience. That's high marks, but that's partnership, and that's developing whatever it is on your campus that may connect you to the academic mission of the institution.
Cara, while we have you for a moment,
okay.
we were talking about connecting academic mission, and is there any research or data that supports recreation's contribution to learning outcomes and leadership?
I think there's some interesting components to that. I'm not sure what you all have delved into, so I'll try not to be repetitive. And I know Stan did start highlighting about the benefits of Campus Rec, Forrester study, and Dugan study.
And there she goes. We get knocked off? Are we still on?
Now you're on.
Oh, we're on. Sorry. Wow, this has been quite a technical day show. Stan, while we have you on the call, can you field that question? What advice do you have for young professionals entering the field?
Well, I think it's still very, very, very fundamental. First of all, it's about diversifying your experience. I think the day and age of specialization as you enter the field of collegiate recreation is over. Our goal here is to integrate our people in all elements of the university. So if you're a fitness person, we're not going to just expect you to understand fitness. We're going to expect you to understand the greater university. So we're able to integrate people by giving them experiences in orientation and giving them experience in programming and residence life and all of those different areas. And I always say there are three things that are the key to success in any profession. And it goes like this: experience, 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 because I don't think there is a substitute. Until you've done it, how do you really know how to do it? And I've always been a firm believer in that. And the best thing about collegiate recreation, and I hope all of our young professionals hear this, is it's a place that you can fail. Because without failure, there is no success. And I think sometimes in our other environments, we don't have the ability to fail. Here, it's a lot of trial balloons. It's a lot of trial and error, new things and new innovations and new ideas. And as I'm sure Don would say as the director at Ohio State, sometimes you succeed, but oftentimes you fail. But we're going to keep trying. And I think that's what our students of today deserve, and our younger staff are the link to them that can connect us with the innovations that we need to have a successful delivery system and more importantly, an overall program.
Mm-hmm.
Don, we got you back. You want to jump in on that?
Yeah, sorry about that. Definitely agree with the comments that Stan made. I think that our young professionals need to be right in line with this idea that all of us serve as educators. You are a campus recreational professional, but you're doing that in the context of educating young people. And so you have to become an expert in working with college students. I think young professionals in our field need to understand student development theory and how that theory is applied. We need to understand how higher education institutions work. Who are the policymakers? Who are the stakeholders? What's the role of the Board of Trustees and the Provost and the President and the Chief Financial Officer in terms of supporting what we want to see happen and what we'd like to do? NERSA is an incredibly progressive association, and so I would always encourage folks to get involved with NERSA and then to take a look at ACPA or NASPA in terms of their higher education affiliation. It's incredible to establish, incredibly important to establish a strong professional network, and so those relationships that get formed are absolutely critical.
Cara, you have any advice for young professionals watching today?
I think that's the biggest thing, and it's the same with the education piece and getting out there. I think the other piece I would add to that is you progress throughout your career, you're going to identify different mentors, and that may be from a professional perspective if you start working in facilities and then switch over to group fitness or whatever that might be. So never be afraid to reach out to those individuals if that's actually within your department or if you're at a state, regional, or national conference.
Great. So we're nearing the end of our time here. Final question, in 60 seconds or less, what's the one thing you'd like to see the folks viewing today think about and focus on in the upcoming year? Let's start off with Cara.
All right, this is the last moment here. I think the biggest thing, and when someone I really look up to on my campus said, we need to look up and look out and listen. And I think one of the pieces that we can take with that is we need to take responsibility for educating ourselves to learn more. We need to take time to educate others about the great work that we do, but then we also need to educate through collaboration. We need to make sure that we're not seeing that, you know, one group of individuals on campus are responsible for leadership, another group responsible for wellness, et cetera, but how are we intentionally identifying the linkages that we have on campus to create these great experiences because we're all in it to develop the whole student.
Okay, Don?
Yeah, I think you know, one of the things that I would hope is that everyone has a really solid response to the criticism about higher education, and it's so expensive today because of these lavish country club environments. So having a response to explain that and to articulate what it is that we do in our operation that really contributes to student learning, how we become an integral part of the student learning agenda. So it's not just us bringing forward suggestions and ideas about research that shows our alignment with the academic mission of the institution, but that we become such a well-known commodity that the folks in the institutional research office or the student affairs assessment office will come to us and say, hey, we want to try this study out, or we want to look at how do we sort of communicate these findings and how do we get the word out about that. At the end of the day, we're helping students learn, develop, and grow, and especially as it relates to leadership, which is one of the passions that I have, we just have really undersold the deep impact that happens in our profession. And so these reports that have been referenced today that are on the NERSA website, our alignment with things like the multi-institutional study of leadership and other activities are really going to allow us to help advance that agenda, and it's an incredibly exciting time for our profession.
Great. Stan?
Well, Tony, I'm going to take a little different. I'm going to use 45 seconds of my minute as a bit of an infomercial for NERSA, or Leaders in Collegiate Recreation, and that's simply, and I'm going to steal a phrase by another initiative, and that's lean into all of the conversations, lean in and be engaged in all of the things that are possible within our association. I talked about the research agenda. We talked about facilities, programs, and services, but it's our membership that is going to drive that. It's our membership that is going to be the pioneering element that takes our profession to the next level, and more importantly, mitigates some of these myths and misconceptions about collegiate recreation and its value, and nobody's going to do that for us. And the association is a platform for doing that, and there's so many wonderful leadership and meaningful opportunities that are available, and also learning opportunities as well from a development standpoint. So I'm going to challenge folks to lean in and be a part of the bigger conversation on a big level.
Great. So we've reached the end of our time. Cara, we'll have to get you back on on the show to talk about leadership in general. We certainly I know you have lots to share with the audience.
Sure. No, thank you, and I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm glad I got in there for a few minutes.
Yeah, and thank you to all of our guests. This was actually a really high-viewed show. We had quite a few folks, and I hope people will take the time to share it with others. It is archived for those who don't know, so once the show is over, you can share the link with other folks within your departments or within your division. I really think this gives a good foundation education as to the value of recreation for higher education. So I'll be returning next week to speak with the new CEO of ACUI, John Taylor, to talk about trends and issues in student unions and his vision for the future of ACUI. Also, be sure to tune in to Heather Shea Gasser on June 24th at 1 o'clock Eastern Time as she talks with Matthew Matera, Susan Munoz, and several other guests on the topic of supporting undocumented students in higher education. Also want to share a little plug that my Pachaka Cha talk is up from this year's National ACPA Conference in Tampa. Robin is tweeting it out now. It's called Curiosity and a Kid in a Candy Store, and I promise it'll be 6 minutes that'll make you smile and question how we teach. Reaffirm the work that we do in student affairs is not simply a value-added proposition, something that we talked about here today. So please find me on Twitter for more information and details of upcoming shows. Until then, my name is Tony Doody. Make it a great week, and thanks for tuning in. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.